Once an inseparable pair on television, one now lies in a grave and the other collapses dead in a courtroom. What turned a friendship of more than a decade into a bloody tragedy? Could it be that behind the seemingly harmless antique hunting trips was a long simmering war that led to an unexpected outcome? Today we will uncover the shocking truth behind the death of American picker star Frank Fritz and the sentence handed down to Michael Wolfe, the man who once called him a friend. Music. The death of Frank Fritz stunned the entire fan community, partly because of the loss of their beloved show, partly because of the truth that slowly emerged behind the seemingly harmless curtain. Frank, who had been the soul of American Pickers, had to leave the show quietly, carrying unseen wounds, both physical and mental. He had been reported to have suffered a severe stroke which had led to his debilitation and withdrawal from the spotlight, but the deeper the investigation, the more unusual the details became. Medical records did not match the signs at the scene. Some statements suggested that Frank was not just troubled by his health, he was living in fear. Frank once shared with a friend that he felt he was being followed. Another time he talked about people trying to silence him. At first everyone thought it was just a symptom of chronic depression and anxiety, but after the autopsy revealed traces of poison in his blood, everything changed. Mike Wolfe initially appeared distraught over Frank's death, appearing in the media looking shocked and choked up, but astute investigators noticed discrepancies from his testimony to the timeline to mysterious financial transactions. A series of clues began to fit together like pieces of a creepy jigsaw puzzle. An unusual money transfer, a disabled surveillance camera the night Frank was found unconscious, and a strange DNA sample in the victim's home. The police began to delve deeper into the true nature of the relationship between the two. Although they were close friends and TV partners on the surface, behind the camera were arguments and irreconcilable differences. Frank felt abandoned, replaced, and increasingly doubted Mike's loyalty, and Mike, faced with the possibility of Frank's return reclaiming his former position, was pushed to his limit. The trial lasted for weeks with chilling evidence and shocking testimony from those who had known both men, and finally the verdict was delivered. But before justice could complete its task, Mike Wolfe, the one-time icon, collapsed, taking all the unfinished secrets with him to the grave. The question remains, is this really the end, or just the tip of the iceberg in the world of television, where friendship, fame, and betrayal are dangerously intertwined? When news of Frank's sudden death at home broke, the public was instantly and deeply saddened. Tributes poured in on social media. Frank was remembered as the heart of the show, a gruff but likable man, the perfect contrast to Mike Wolfe's gentle and charming demeanor. But just 6 weeks after the funeral, a quiet investigation began in Iowa. At first it was just a small question. A coroner noticed something amiss in the autopsy report. Frank had a lethal level of fentanyl in his system. This at first glance might not have seemed unusual. Fentanyl is a powerful painkiller, sometimes prescribed for severe pain after a stroke, but there was a problem. Frank had no prescription, no history of use, and according to those close to him was actually terrified of the drug. He had never touched it. There was no reason for the substance to be in his system unless someone had intentionally introduced it. Those suspicions could not be ignored. The local police contacted the DEA and then the FBI. What began as a natural death investigation quickly turned into a full-scale criminal investigation. They searched phones, GPS records, deleted emails, text messages, and then one name kept coming up: Mike Wolfe. To the public, Mike was a charming man, a creative entrepreneur who had turned antiquities hunting into an art form, but inside he was a man obsessed with power, control, and especially absolute ownership of the show's legacy. After Frank left, Mike not only kept his true reasons secret but also began taking some cold, quiet steps. He registered the trademark for the name Frank. It's just weeks after Frank died he secretly approached a third party to buy Frank's stake in the company, as if the death were an opportunity to take over the brand entirely. And then came the most incontrovertible evidence: a neighbor's doorbell camera had captured Mike near Frank's house on the very night prosecutors believed the fatal dose of fentanyl was administered. No one wanted to believe it. How could it be Mike Wolfe, the man who called Frank brother, his decadesal long on-screen companion? It seemed impossible, but evidence doesn't lie, and the mask of television can't hide a dark truth. Music. Forever. And when the trial began, it was like a reality TV show that couldn't be put down, a dark, suspenseful drama where the whole country watched every detail, every testimony, every lie that was peeled away, revealing a horrifying and gut-wrenching truth. Mike Wolfe was not only accused of betraying Frank Fritz, the man he once considered his soulmate, his companion on every journey, but also accused of coldly and deliberately poisoning his best friend to take it all: his reputation, his legacy, and the entire brand they had built together. A life sentence loomed over him, and Mike's sudden death, right before the eyes of the justice system, the agency responsible for enforcing law and justice, was a somber end to one of the darkest chapters in reality TV history. But the story didn't end there, for before the trial, before the death, there was a friendship, a partnership forged over time, over dusty journeys between decaying warehouses and cobwebbed garages. So what broke that seemingly inseparable bond? What made Mike Wolfe, who once called Frank his brother, capable of such cruelty? To understand the roots of this tragedy, we have to go back in time to where it all began, to the early days of American Picker, the heyday of two like-minded friends with the same passion and the same desire to write a very American story in the early 2000s, when reality TV was still a new land, not yet dominated by scripted dating or sensational drama. Mike Wolfe had a vision, not flashy, not showy, but so real it was impossible to ignore. He's not a producer, he's not an actor, and he doesn't have the backing of a media empire. What he does have is tenacity, a keen eye for antiques, and an irresistible love of finding lost treasures. Mike has been a true forager since he was a young man. He'd roam small towns, knock on doors, ask people what they had to sell. Sometimes it was real treasure, more often it was trash, broken items, or worthless items, but that never stopped him. He envisioned a show that would capture the thrill of treasure hunting, the excitement of negotiating for each item, the fascination of discovering forgotten treasures, and the deep connection between an item and the person who once owned it. It wasn't just a show about antiques, it was a journey through memories. And then Frank Fritz came along. Frank is the polar opposite of Mike in many ways. While Mike is outgoing, optimistic, charismatic, and energetic, Frank is calmer, more reserved, and humble. He's a technical guy with a passion for vintage toys, old oil cans, and time on billboards. He's not interested in the flashy on the outside, but the real worth is often hidden in the small details. They had known each other since high school, but their adult lives took different paths. While Frank worked as a firefighter and safety inspector for years before deciding to fully immerse himself in the world of antiques, Mike worked as a picker and traveled across the United States as his job. When Mike started looking for a trusted partner to help him make his dream come true in 2009, Frank was the perfect choice because they were so different from each other but so similar. The History Channel finally gave Mike Wolfe the go-ahead, so American Pickers began as a show that seemed pretty easy. Two men in a truck driving through the back roads of America looking for lost items, but Mike and Frank's unique combination and the way they told stories made the show a huge hit. In its first season, American Pickers drew record numbers of viewers who were drawn in by both the hosts' love of antiques and their natural chemistry. The show became more real and relatable thanks to Mike's deft negotiating skills and sharp eye for hidden value, and Frank's depth and amazing knowledge of collectibles. But the most interesting thing about each episode is not the items, but the people who are in them. An emotional journey where viewers meet old people who still hold on to old memories, couples who are glad to talk about their family heirlooms, and strange collectors who are happy to let viewers into their world of memories stored in every corner of dusty warehouses and garages. There are laughs, tears, and memories brought back from decades ago. American Pickers never makes fun of or insults these people. In fact, the show has a lot of respect for them, and that's what has made it so special to millions of viewers over the years. Liking things, the people who put on the show's names went through the roof. Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz quickly became famous, showing up at big and small events and packed autograph signings. Their fans made Mike's antique archaeology stores in Iowa and Nashville into pilgrimage sites. But as is often the case in the glamorous world of reality TV, fame comes with a price. Mike and Frank's seemingly unbreakable partnership started to change as fame opened up new doors but also created gaps that were hard to bridge. Mike Wolfe slowly became the face of the brand. He became more in front of the camera, he was comfortable giving more interviews, growing his business, and going deeper into his personal brand. But behind the scenes, Mike took over. He became executive producer, oversaw all branding deals, led deals, and controlled much of the show's content. Over time, the lines between partner and boss started to blur. On TV, Frank was still shown as an equal partner, but behind the camera, things were no longer balanced. People who worked closely with them have revealed hidden conflicts that had been going on for years. Frank felt like he wasn't being heard. Mike's feelings of not being valued grew as former crew members say he stopped working with the others on the show and started acting like it was his own project instead of a group effort. This wasn't just down to ego, it was a problem with the power structure. Mike had a mark that was used for archaeology. Mike ran the production company and had the final say on creative choices. By season 10, loyal viewers started to notice a big change. Frank seemed quieter, his screen time was cut, he didn't show up in as many ads or interviews, and rumors started to spread. Thought that Frank might be having health problems. Others talked about problems within the show. It never officially talked about them, but social media didn't, and then the story came out. Frank wasn't going to be back, The official reason was that he needed time off to heal from back surgery, which was a hazy